When you call 911, it's not magic. There has to be somebody there to fill that gap.
All right. What's up, everybody? We are back with another episode of the Badass Motherfucker podcast with our guest today, Miss Lisa Davis, a flight nurse and manager out of Bishop, California. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Like I was telling you earlier, I actually didn't have a lot of opportunities to talk to flight nurses. Can you explain kind of what that is for our listeners?
Sure. So flight nursing is, despite what you see on TV, is usually transferring patients from one hospital to another using either a fixed wing aircraft or a rotor wing aircraft. Sometimes rotor wing or even fixed wing now will land on a scene of a car accident and transfer patients to the nearest trauma center or even the nearest capable facility, usually comprised of a nurse and a medic, and then of course your pilot as well.
How long have you been doing this?
17 years.
17 years as a flight nurse or just as a nurse in general?
As a flight nurse. I've been a nurse for 20 years, a flight nurse for 17.
Why flight nursing? 17 years you've done it. Why choose flight nursing over any other nursing career?
It just kind of it fell into what I was doing. I started as an EMT in the early 90s. And it's kind of funny because I went from being an EMT to nursing school because I had said I don't want to be jumping out of the back of an ambulance when I'm 50 years old. And as we get further into this, we'll probably find out that I have absolutely come full circle. Went to nursing school and was lucky enough to get an internship in the ER because of my background as an EMT. And then, life happened and I moved back home to California after I'd gone to nursing school and went straight into the emergency room in my hometown where I grew up. And one of the nurses that worked there in the ER with me worked for the local air ambulance company. And after I'd been there for a while, she finally said, why don't you come work with us? And then I think it must have been in like 2015 maybe or 16, some organizational changes at the hospital I was working at full time, and the flight company was growing and they put some full-time positions on, and the program director, Mike Patterson, at that time finally said to me one day, "You ready to make the jump? I've got a full-time spot." And he hit me on the right day, and I flip-flopped to part-time at the hospital and full-time flight nursing, and I've been full-time ever since.
Did you always want to be a flight nurse?
I don't know that I always wanted to be an ER nurse. And then the flight nursing kind of just came along with it. I remember when I was doing that internship at the very beginning, there was this gal who was a flight nurse at the hospital I worked at. And it was like, the heavens opened up and the angels sang when she walked in the room. She was just badass. I can remember thinking that I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And I can remember when I was moving to California, looking up, flight nursing, what the opportunities were. And I actually came across the company that I now work for. And I can remember thinking to myself, I'll never be good enough to work with those guys. And now I actually work and train people in that company. So it's pretty cool.
These two people who work for you, Krista Hollenberg, I believe, and DJ, have said such wonderful things about you. One of which is that you always look out for them. I think there was a moment when Krista had to come into work, and I guess you guys had a pretty rough go after COVID, and there was a crash with a sister company that kind of grounded all planes, and you guys were forced to make all your transfers via ambulance. Is that right?
That's correct. That was last winter.
That was just last winter.
Just this last March.
Can you kind of explain what happened there?
Unfortunately, our certificate holder had a crash. The whole fleet was grounded for about 30 days, which because of our remote location and no other resources, we were forced to take all of the patients out of our area by ground to the nearest appropriate facilities. And for us, it's 4 hours to anywhere, just one way. I think we took 26, 27 patients by ground that month. So our flight crews became ground crews real fast. So besides, trying to process this crash that colleagues that some of us knew, we had to pivot and figure out how we were going to take care of our community. Because, there's no one coming to help us here. We're super isolated. So it was really imperative that we figured out how to move our community members throughout the valley.
You're in Bishop, California, and I looked it up. There's a population of about 3,000 people, and I was thinking like, man, I think Taylor Swift just did a performance to 20,000 people, and so like, just to compare, 3,000 people is like, you know, a small venue.
Yeah,
I know. I was looking up stuff about Bishop before we hopped on the call, and it's a gorgeous
It's absolutely
area.
Beautiful. You're in LA?
I am in LA. Yes.
Yeah,
Downtown LA.
It's much better than that. You come up 395. If you ever come up here, you can come by the base and see the base. Let me know. You have my phone number. I'd be happy to give you a tour.
Oh my God, yes, I would love to. I don't get out of the city enough. I'm always here doing shows and.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job. You're hilarious. So I laugh so hard.
Thank you.
I die at some of that stuff. I don't know how you come up with it, but it's so true.
A lot of it was from experience. Some of it now is from stories that other people give me. I don't think I've actually done a flight nurse scenario. We don't get. The only times I interact with you, you guys come in cool as a cucumber, drop them off. Sometimes you'll sometimes actually help with the traumas if you're around. I remember that.
Yeah, here at our little tiny hospitals here, you know, they're little critical access hospitals. They can only do so much. So they wait for us, you know, sometimes. Like there's my stable patient
sure.
Mary. I mean, there's some stories that I could go on and on, but yeah, a lot of times they're waiting for us to get there to help stabilize because they've just exhausted their resources.
You guys work so independently out there, you know, like there's no one to answer to, there's no one to call for help. I mean, you can call for help, but like you're basically out there yourself. I mean,
yeah, no, you get up to 18,000 feet and it's your partner and the pilot. And that's it.
Yeah,
I tell these guys, you better know your shit because there's no one to call and no one's coming.
Absolutely no one's coming.
It's just us.
Yeah, you know, like I forgot to mention what the way you felt when you saw that flight nurse walk into the ER. Like it's every time you guys, you know, when a flight nurse walks in, it's like, oh, yeah. Look at this.
You know, I forget about that too. That's kind of how it is. You know, when I was talking about that, I was thinking, oh yeah, I remember how exciting that is, and you don't want to steal anyone's joy either. You know, to taking away that the new nurses that come, they're so excited. I have to remind myself how excited they are. They're excited about the flight suit. And I'm like, it's not that big a deal. They're excited about that. They're excited to take the Instagram picture and that they're in the airplane. And
yeah,
I have to remind myself, this is exciting. You have a great job.
It's pretty fucking badass. And especially for a paramedic, I don't think there's anything like, where else do you go after that? You know, a flight medic, that's right?
That is it.
That's it. That's literally the pinnacle of your job. I mean, like there's so far and few in between. It's so hard to get. Like, and even you, like, you're not taking applications. You know who you know who you want.
We were just saying this morning, someone's gonna have to die before there's another paramedic squad here because we'll feed these ground medics up into the flight positions. So this ground thing has really changed things.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Again, I worked for an ambulance company, and it's just a nightmare all around. And you heard it because, like, you know, like word gets around the grapevine. Like every single company was just like, I kind of want to work for here. They're shit. You should go more for here. Nah, they're shit too. And it's just like, so it was so toxic. It was like the most toxic thing to be around. I couldn't wait to get out.
That's too bad because it can be so fun. I mean, it's been a good reminder for me. I remember I was just telling Mike the other day, we ran a 911 call together and I kneeled down and on my knees in pee and saturated carpet and it's like, oh yeah, I remember when I went to nursing school now.
I like, oh my God, I forgot. Like the craziest thing was not knowing what you were going to get when you walk into someone's house.
Eating a dog.
Right?
You know?
It's you, like you're always shocked when like the house is actually kind of nice and put together. Because for the most part, you're like, okay, just pray that there's, you know, not just piss and shit on the floor.
There's not bugs and roaches and some dog that wants to eat me.
Or 14 cats, or the person's not upstairs, so you got to freaking either stair chair them down. Or...
Yeah. How I've been reminded. Yeah. We were just doing that the other day.
Oh my God.
So it certainly comes full circle for me.
I know, which is so crazy. So crazy you have to go back and do all that again. But, you know, again, I think like you said, like as long as you got the right people around you, because I still remember there were some shifts where it was amazing. As long as you had the right partner and dispatch was being kind of like decent with like spacing out, you know, your calls. Yeah. It's a great day, you know, 12 hours, you do maybe like four calls on average, 3 on a good day, 5 on a bad day, but it was still good. Yeah. It was still great.
Yeah. We have those days here too, but boy, we can certainly get our asses handed to us.
There was a moment last year, Krista said that, she came into work and thought that she was okay, found out she wasn't. And you being the awesome manager that you were, recognized that, told her it's going to be okay, sent her home, gave her the day off, gave her some resources for help. And she appreciated that so much. That was just one of the main talking points about you. You kind of just look out for those that you work for.
Yeah. This place is pretty special, and it's those people that keep it special. So my partner Mike and I really, really pay attention to what's going on with them. They've all been around long enough to where we can tell when they're off. And we were really keeping an eye on them during that period of time. It was, that on top of COVID. It's been a little bit of a rough go.
There was once a 17-hour call. Is that right? Calls can go for as long as 17 hours.
They can.
Like, what does that consist of? Can you just kind of walk me through the day in the life of a flight nurse?
Oh, it just depends. It depends on what we get ourselves into, because we're so geographically isolated. Getting to anywhere always takes some time. But when they're that long, it's usually that we have gone to somewhere like Las Vegas and we're transferring an ECMO or an Impella patient to the LA basin or somewhere, or we're going from one end of the state to another for some kind of specialty care that's not available where the patient is. When you add in ground time, flight time, patient prep time, they can go a while. Or you get to the hospital and the patient goes back into the OR. I've had that happen. You're ready to go, and all of a sudden they swoop them back to the OR for stabilization, and you got to wait around. And then now you have a super unstable patient. The thing about flight nursing is we never know what we're going to get. A day in the life, I mean, it's hard to say. You come in, check your gear, grab your communication devices, check out the airplane, talk to the pilot, and you sit and wait. And it could be a day that you get to watch, whatever. You get to scroll through social media all day, or it's a day that you don't come back till 18 hours later.
How long are the shifts for your workers? Are they there for 24 hours at a time, 2 days a week?
Full time for us is 7 days a month. So they do 24 on, 24 off rotations, a set of 4, and then another set of 6 or 5. So they get big chunks of time off after those 24 on, 24 hour off rotations. So you can have a rotation that's brutal, where you're up all night, every night. Or you can have a rotation that, you got to catch up on your binge watching.
Again, you're transferring very critical patients. You're being transported in one of the most complicated vehicles on Earth. Like, you really got to be on high alert at all times, right? So like trying to fight against falling asleep after, even 8 hours, I imagine would be very difficult.
It is. It can be. Everything's about safety. High alert all the time. We don't go anywhere unless it's safe. But once you're in the airplane and going and responsible for a patient, yeah, it's high energy.
Do you ever miss it?
I still do it.
You still do it?
Yep.
No way.
Yeah. It's what reminds me of why we do all this. And reminds me that maybe what you just tried to implement won't work so well.
I think DJ also mentioned that you recently got recertified to work on the ambulance for last year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, full circle. Our operation here recently took on the ground ambulance service here in our little town. So now we provide the 911 ALS service. And I went back and recertified my EMT basic, right? The thing that started this mess. And like I said, here I am. I went to school so I wasn't jumping out of an ambulance at 50 years old. And here I am, 53, jumping out of the back of an ambulance. So,
which, I mean, we'll get to why you had to go back on the ambulance first, but it's kind of funny that you have a certification to go flight nursing, but you have to get recertified to get on an ambulance to, transfer patients too, which I think is really funny.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it's California and the board of nursing and LEMSAs and all that stuff.
So this is really interesting. Tell me why, what happened and why you guys had to take over the ambulance services in your city.
We're a long-time provider, 30, 35 years, small ambulance, family-owned provider. the difficulties with small companies and reimbursement and staffing ended up going out of business, which was a huge loss to our community. That provider really, really made a difference here for a long, long time. When they closed their doors, another provider came in, some of the same challenges, and only lasted about 90 days. So we stepped up, kind of went for a week. Are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? What's going to happen? And then we got a call and they said, yeah, we'd like you guys to step in and start providing the service. It was a mad dash trying to get our act together and throw an ambulance together and find all the right equipment. And we have an incredible team, and everybody, it was all hands on deck. Everybody came together and we were able to pull it off. Our flight medics, they all have that ground experience, and they were all absolutely 100% willing to jump back on the ambulance to help our community. And they still are. We're just so lucky to have the people working here that we have, because we would not be able to pull off half of the stuff that we do without this group of people.
Again, so I used to work for an ambulance company, and I worked for like 3 in my, I think, 2 years, just because nobody's happy working on the, I don't know what it is, but when I was working, it just felt like no ambulance company had it figured out. There was always something that was going on. There was always a problem. People were rarely happy. What is it about an ambulance company that we just can't figure out?
If I knew the answer to that, we'd be able to fix it all. But I really think that culture where you work is a big thing. It's mutual respect. It's being valued. You can pretty much do anything if you feel like the people that you work for value you and value your opinion and respect you. And that's really the basis of everything that we do here, is this mutual respect. Mike and I lead by example. We don't ask them to do anything that we wouldn't do. Another huge reason why we can both still jump in the back of an ambulance. We both can still get in the airplane. They need an extra hand, we jump in. Again, I think it's credibility and mutual respect. So I'm hoping, and as we move on, that same ethos with our ground operation will make it successful.
How long has it been since you've taken over the ambulance services?
It was July.
Oh, it was just in July. What are you kind of seeing as like some of the bigger challenges as you're trying to figure this all out?
Vehicle maintenance. Really? That's the big challenge right now, is not blown tires.
Really?
Yeah, you'd never dream that, but we never thought we needed to. What are we going to do when these tires blow? Mechanical on these ambulances has been the biggest thing, and it's expensive. Again, government reimbursement is not good.
Yeah, when you say government reimbursement, what do you mean? Like not
the Affordable
good?
Care Act has made things very difficult for the reimbursement rates for the ambulance. They haven't been raised in years, since the early 90s. So you have to make some money to be able to stay open, and government payer mixes aren't good. So we have to be really conscientious.
Can you kind of explain what that means? This reimbursement, what do you mean it hasn't changed since the 90s?
Insurance reimbursement for ambulance is super low.
Someone takes an ambulance and they get a ride to, like, say, the hospital, and they have insurance. The government will only pay back about $110 for that ride.
Yeah, that doesn't even cover gas in California, really.
So how do these ambulance companies make money?
Private pay or private insurance, but as things are reorganized, Medicare and Medi-Cal starts to be the predominant payer. That is the challenge. And if you look at the news across the country, you can see all these little ambulance companies that are closing up for those reasons.
Not that you mentioned it, I remember when I was working at my first ambulance company, I walked to my boss's office, and they were buying a Zoll off eBay. And I kind of just went, do you guys not have money to buy new equipment? Why are you buying a used Zoll off eBay?
There's so much that the public doesn't realize about that. They, when you call 911, it's not magic. There has to be someone to respond. And it's just like going to the emergency room, and your hospital doesn't have the capability to take care of or to do what you need. That there has to be somebody there to fill that gap. So, and the general public doesn't realize that in the background, there's this group of people that takes care of it quietly.
It's pretty amazing that you guys have taken on the entire ambulance service. Like, again, I know it's not easy. I know there's like a million things that are going on. It's hard to keep everybody happy, when they're working for an ambulance company, but you somehow managed to do it.
Matter of fact, we have 2 paramedics that came to work for us that turned down other jobs in a bigger system to stay with our operation because they felt like, they wanted to be part of something, that this was going to be a good thing. I was floored when they told us that. So I'm excited to see where we go. We've got some great people that are dedicated.
DJ was another surprising story. I guess you've worked with him before, but you kind of saw something in him when you guys were working in the hospital, and you kind of just told him like, hey, you should come work for me.
Yeah, he was a paramedic bringing patients into us in the emergency room. I think I was chief flight nurse at that time, and kind of keeping an eye on him, always looking for potential new people. I remember one day he came and picked us up, and I said, hey, I'm going to ride up front with you. He said, oh, okay. And at that point in time, I was the pre-hospital liaison nurse, which is kind of the nurse that oversees all the field paramedics. And he told me later that he thought he was in trouble. I rode to the hospital with him in the front seat and said, hey, we've really been watching you, and we have a paramedic position available. I'm wondering if you'd be interested in coming to work for us. And, DJ's driving the car or the ambulance, and he's trying to be cool and, okay. And he says, oh yeah, well, I'll consider that. And he told me later that it was all he could do not to do backflips when he got out of the ambulance. And that started an amazing relationship. He's absolutely brilliant. He has a special knack for the ventilator. So I'd like to say that he can make it do backflips. So he's our main vent guy because it's not my area of expertise. And he's amazing.
Yeah, it seems like you're very good at kind of just getting the best out of the people that work for you.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by really talented people, and identifying who's good at what, just kind of letting them do their thing. Like I have one nurse that's a cardiac queen. Well, she does that. She takes care of all that for us. I have another one like Krista. Krista's just an absolute trauma powerhouse. So, she takes the lead on that kind of stuff. Everybody has their little niche. We have Chuck Spencer, who is our supply guy and our resident. The guy's been on an ambulance for longer than most of us been alive, and he knows everyone. So, Chuck is kind of our glue. He keeps it together and makes sure we have what we need. I have Craig, who is a Marine. He can precept anybody. And boy, isn't he the guy that you want to have on a scene with you, especially if someone's misbehaving.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear you talk about your coworkers like this. Again, like I don't think you can say enough about like having the right culture and coming to work. Just because, again, like I left during COVID when it was a shit show all around. And I still keep in touch with a lot of my old coworkers. And it's just having to work with people who you don't necessarily trust because either they're new or because they're travelers who are kind of coming in, just not really giving two shits about like the culture of the hospital they work for. It gets tiring, and just burnout happens real fast.
Yeah, it can happen here. We have our moments. We definitely have our moments, and COVID was hard. We're in that, at the very beginning of COVID, think about flying aluminum tube with recycled air and full PPE, basically wearing a trash bag. And we're flying down to the border area in the middle of the summer for COVID patients that were moving to the other end of California. 4, 5, 6 hours in full PPE when it's 110. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal on these guys.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think just kind of what helps you as a manager be such a sympathetic person to your workers is that you're literally still doing it. You've done it for so long. You know exactly, the ups and downs of the job. When I was working, not a lot, but like some of our managers who became managers hadn't worked for that long on the floor, just because, there was such high turnover. We kind of needed just to get people in that position to fill it. It's different when you start off, first of all, as an EMT, and then going into a nurse on the floor, and then being the flight nurse. I think when you know all the ins and outs of the job, it makes you a lot more sympathetic to, the hardships of what it is. So it makes you a great boss.
I know when it sucks, when they're catching flights back to back to back to back, and it's hot and they haven't eaten. And, if I'm at home watching the dispatches go out, it's like, oh God, that sucks. I can just feel it.
You mentioned that you're in your office a lot, which, also kind of helps that they get to see you at work. But how often would you say that you're in your office as opposed to being at home?
If I'm here, I'm in my office. If I go home on the weekends. I try to, but
just the weekends.
I'm here. I try and be here at shift change in the morning when they're here, and we wrap up sometimes, between 4 or 5 at night. Usually after 5, kind of depends on what's going on. But yeah, I'm here with them most of the day, and I'm always available by phone. They can call anytime. I have a really supportive husband. I had to tell him, this is my life. And the phone rings constantly. This is just what it is.
Do you have children? Do you have kids too?
I do have kids. They're grown and gone.
They're grown and gone. So is it just you and your husband at home?
And the 2 dogs.
What does he do?
He's also a supervisor. So, we can have some great conversations about, culture and employees. And how was your day, honey?
Has it kind of always been this busy for you, even when the kids were younger?
I don't know. That might be a question for them. But when I worked in the emergency room, it was a 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. So it was kind of a weird shift. My parents helped a lot when they were little. Was really lucky to live in the same town with grandma and grandpa. And so they kind of picked up that slack. I don't know. I'll have to ask them if it was always this busy.
Can I ask you how old you are?
I'm 53.
You're 53, and it seems like you're busier now than ever in your life, which is pretty crazy. At 53, I'd probably be thinking about how the fuck do I get the hell out of here and go home.
There are days. There's I'm like, yeah, I'm out, but no. And they're few and far between. Like I said, I love who I work with, and you guys asked me to think about some stories, and I was thinking the biggest thing to kind of demonstrate just what our culture is here, and maybe why we are who we are here is, this last year I lost my mom. She had multiple myeloma, and we had to transfer her out of our little hometown and up to Reno. And I remember the day that we transferred her from our ER here, and how relieved I was when my crew came in. Here are my people ready to load my mom up and go up to where we're going to get some help, or the help that she needed that we couldn't get here. Unfortunately, it was a very quick process. She only lived another 6 weeks or so. When we finally decided to bring her home, about 6 weeks later, the airplane came, and I remember never being so relieved to see Corey and Blake walk in to take my mom home. And we flew her home back to the valley. And, my crew was all here waiting, and they had set up a hospital bed. We brought her home to be on hospice, and we had to admit her to the hospital first. And they took her there and got her tucked in there. And then they proceeded to go out to my parents' house and get a hospital bed set up and get things ready for us. And when it was time to take her home, DJ and Craig made sure they were there to tuck her in. And that's just what we do here. That's the special people I work with. Sorry. Shit.
That's okay.
But that's how special this building is, and the people that work here, and maybe why I do what I do, because, it wasn't because it was me. It was, we do it for anyone. Mike was standing here when I got home. It meant the world to me. I knew that we were home and we were safe, and everything was going to, happen as it was supposed to, because they were all right here with us.
You say like anybody there would do it for anybody else there, but I just don't think that's normal in the usual workplace. I don't think you should underestimate, what you're doing for them and what they're willing to do for you because of who you are. Again, I've heard a lot of great stories about you. I talked to, two of your workers. I was going to talk to Mike too, but like after I talked to DJ and Krista, I'm like, I think I have enough. I think we just need to talk to this woman.
You got to talk to Mike, because we could all talk about Mike the same way. Because he's, I gotta make sure that everybody knows that this isn't a one-man show. This is, Mike and I together. We're just in the middle of this three-ring circus, and he is very, very important to how this culture is and what we're all about. He brought me in, so he very much has built this castle, and it's a reflection of him.
Was he the nurse that you were talking about earlier that kind of said, hey, you have a position open, are you ready? Caught you on a good day?
He recruited me. Well, I worked, was part-time, and then he was kind of after me. But yeah, he's been here for 25 years. He's built this for the most part, and I've got to ride along with him. Yeah,
like I said, I would like he was the next person we were gonna call, but after listening to Kristen and DJ, they were so passionate about you. It was really great to hear. It was like one of the most passionate conversations. I think DJ mentioned she teaches classes in Sacramento. Everybody in town knows her when it comes to EMS. Just endless stories. They adore you. They love working for you, and they were happy as hell to nominate you because, they truly believe that you are a badass motherfucker at work.
They're pretty cool too, Kristen, DJ. So, they're pretty badass themselves.
Lisa, I mean, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and listening to you, and I can tell how passionate you are about your job, and I'm so happy you agreed to, get on this phone call and let me talk to you. Yeah, I'd like to end usually these little podcast interviews with a few questions. One being, in your illustrious 20 years of nursing, 17 years flight nursing, and 53 years of being an incredible person, what is the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
I think I said it earlier. Everybody is somebody's somebody. Just remember that when it gets tough and you're, oh, great, that's another drunk guy or another, someone who's not taking care of themselves. But every patient is somebody, and they deserve for us to take good care of them and be kind. We'll just about get you out of any mess.
Last question is tips from a flight nurse. What is one thing you wish everybody outside looking in would understand about your job?
It's not glamorous. You see the pictures of people with the flowing hair, the makeup going, you get off the helicopter and everyone's beautiful. No, that's not how it goes. So don't think it's glamorous. It's not. It's hard and it's hot. You're either sweating your balls off or, freezing to death.
You get cool jumpsuits though. I remember that.
They're hot. They're hotter than hell, and they stink after a while. They're not that cool.
They're pretty cool. Don't let her say anything about that to you guys. You guys look like astronauts. You look like you come from space. It's awesome. Thank you for doing this. It's been so wonderful talking to you. Do you have any last minute thoughts? Any last minute questions you'd like to share with everybody?
I don't think so. I'll think of 100 things later, but no, I'm good. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Lisa Davis from Bishop, California, everybody.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for listening to the Badass Motherfucker podcast. If you have a coworker who you believe is a badass motherfucker, head over to badassmotherfucker.com to nominate them. My goal is to highlight and share more stories of healthcare workers doing exceptional work in their community who deserve a little bit more recognition. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please give us a like, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Hell, slide into my DMs and tell me yourself. I can't wait to bring more stories your way. But until then, keep being the badass motherfucker that you are.